a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Now this is another reply video to Paul talk. Now I have shown how Watteau, Fragonard and Boucher constantly drew from life and observed nature, and then they would use these drawings in their paintings, but they never just painted out of their imagination just like that. It was always based on observational drawings, and the observation of nature has been one of the most important aspects, I call it the most important aspect, of European painting, because from it everything came from it. Now Paul has made claims on his video that Watteau, Boucher and Fragonard, their work is somehow related to Poussin, and this is another thing that I'm going to show is not right, and that Watteau, Fragonard and Boucher have more relationship with Flemish painting, and Watteau himself was of Flemish Dutch origin, and that they were not heavily influenced by the classical Italian art. They were more influenced by people like Titian and Correggio, and Correggio softened the forms, so there was no harsh edges in his work, and this is what David rejected. And so, but Watteau and Fragonard and Boucher, their work has this softness to it. Their work also has subjects which relate to Flemish and Dutch painting. So you have like domestic drawings of domestic scenes, and you can see the relationship of their work to people like Bruegel and Rubens. This is not Italian painting. This is not Italian classical painting. Far away from Carracci and Poussin. And you see Fragonard, he was influenced by people like Frans Hals, and his portraits are very similar to Frans Hals. Chardin's painting was also very similar to Dutch painting. And before the academies, French painting was actually more influenced by Flemish painters. It was only when these academies started that Poussin gained a greater influence, and then there was this debate between Poussin and Rubens. So Boucher, Fragonard and Watteau, their paintings have a greater relationship with Flemish painting than the classical work of Poussin. Now Poussin painted in Rome during the Baroque period, and his work is actually a rebellion against Baroque painting, and so he pared things down and kind of rationalized painting. But even Poussin drew from models, and he actually had statues, small little statues made, and used to light them. He didn't just paint from his imagination. This idea of painting completely from your imagination is a modern concept. In the past they had a holistic approach, but at the center of it was observation, and the observation of the model. And I'm going to quote Ernest Short, historian Ernest Short, with his description of Poussin's paintings. His art, which there was no effort at anything beyond combining clarity of representation with intellectual beauty. A vivid art, no, but a gracious, rhythmic, truly monumental, yes. So what he's saying is that Poussin's paintings are more aesthetic in their look. Now for me, Poussin was not on the level of Rubens, Titian, Rembrandt, Velázquez. He was a first-rate Baroque painter, but he was on the lower end of Baroque painting. And his work bears no relationship to Watteau, Fragonard and Boucher. In fact, they are the opposite. They were looking for opposite qualities. And this then was picked up by David. And so you have Johann Winkelmann, and he is really the father of art history. And he started looking at art, not by artists like Vasari, but by styles. And he looked at painting in an aesthetic way. And this came to dominate French art in the academies. And his ideas of art history combined with the French Revolution, the progressive, so-called progressive ideas of the French Revolution, which then led to the ideas of modern art. That art is some kind of this progressive evolution towards the modern age. And if you believe that idea, you believe that the last 500 years of painting culminates in Tracy Emin. And so David adopted the ideas of Winkelmann, and Winkelmann called for an art which was much more stricter, which was much more like his perception of classical Greece, and very different to Boucher. And in fact, Boucher, Watteau and Fragonard were marginalized from this time onwards. And it is David that is the inheritor of Poussin, and then Ingres after that. And so someone said that David did not paint from models. Well, here's two life studies from the model from David. Now, David was a great artist in his own right. And so the style of David was then the main projector in French art. And A painter that Paul reveres is Puvis, and Puvis is actually more closely related to David and Ong than Watteau, Fragonard and Boucher. He's the opposite. And we have a quote here from an arts critic called Gautier, who Puvis de Chavannes was very close to. And these are their ideas. We must not ask of decorative painting illusion, deception, or any kind of real truth. Decorative painting should hang on the walls like a veil of colour and not penetrate them. So what he was saying is that all things are necessary to the aesthetic image, even the depictions of real people, and any kind of real truth should be omitted from painting. Now, I do not call that a balanced equation between what he calls the illustrational and the abstract. And in fact, Puvis, who was most influenced by Poussin and this elimination of humanity from art, from painting, rejected the methods of Titian, Tintoretto and Rubens, and even those of Delacroix, who he studied for 2 weeks. And his idea was to eliminate all unnecessary detail and illusionistic aspects from painting. And this is where painting goes wrong. And what you're looking at are aesthetic images, rather than expressions of real human experience, which I think is one of the main aspects of European painting. So, give me a Rembrandt, give me a Velázquez, give me a Freud, any time of the week, to decorative, aesthetic, benign painting. And this idea of painting coming all from the imagination, even Puvis de Chavannes drew from models and then organised him in his paintings. But this idea of drawing from your imagination solely is a modern idea which came from symbolism and then through Gauguin and which continues in the modern day. And here we have an example of a painter who painted solely from his imagination. And this is what he paints. It is a modern idea, not one of Fragonard, Boucher and Watteau. This is painting from your imagination without observation. European art, on the other hand, has been about observation as the primary aspect of painting. And then from that, you invent the subject on the canvas. Thank you.